There are some streets that never make it onto city maps. Streets where time feels heavier, where even the wind seems to hold its breath. Ashford Street was one of them, and at the far end of that cracked road stood an old two-story house number 39. People used to say it had bad luck written all over it. They said no family ever stayed there long. They said it was cursed. But this isn't a story about ghosts or demons. It's about something much worse, something real. Detective Evan Cole had been with the department for 15 years, and during that time, he'd seen it all: homicides, disappearances, and every form of human cruelty imaginable. But there was one case that never left him. Clara Benson, 24 years old, college student, vanished one rainy October night in 2012. No body, no suspects, no closure, just a single missing person flyer that had turned from white to yellow with time. Then, one morning, in the fall of 2024, the call came in. A demolition crew had started tearing down an abandoned house on Ashford Street, and they'd found something inside the walls. When Evan arrived, the sky was gray, the kind of gray that sits heavy over your head. The street was quiet except for the hum of machines and the murmur of construction workers who looked pale, shaken. The house stood crooked, its paint peeling like dried skin, its windows covered with boards. He stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and something else, something sour, like rot that had been hiding for decades. His flashlight beam caught a patch of crumbled drywall, and behind it, bones. Human bones. The medical examiner confirmed they belonged to a woman early 20s, 5'4", and the tattered floral fabric found nearby matched the dress Clara Benson had been wearing the night she disappeared. Evan felt his pulse slow, not with relief, but with that heavy sadness. Only detectives understand the kind that comes from knowing a mystery is ending. But a tragedy is finally confirmed. But something didn't fit. The bones weren't new. In fact, they were much older, decades older than Clara's case. That discovery opened a door Evan wasn't prepared to walk through. When he dug deeper into the property records, he found something strange. Over the past 50 years, the house had changed hands 6 times. 6 different families, none of them related, all of them gone within a few years. Each time, the story was different: a suicide, a disappearance, a quiet sale to another desperate buyer. And every single transaction had one name attached: the same real estate agent, Harold Crane. Evan started digging into Crane's history. The man was old now, 81, living in a nursing home just outside the city. His file said he'd retired in 1994. No criminal record, no lawsuits. But something about his quiet, clean life felt wrong. Evan paid him a visit. The old man was sitting in a chair by the window, feeding crumbs to a bird outside. He turned slowly when Evan introduced himself, a polite smile stretching over his wrinkled face. "Detective Cole," he said softly. "You must be here about the house." Evan froze for a second. He hadn't said which house. Harold laughed quietly, his voice dry as paper. "I always knew someone would come back for that place." Evan asked him how long he'd been selling properties on Ashford Street. The old man's answer chilled him. Since before they called it Ashford. Since before the street even had numbers. It didn't make sense. Harold couldn't have been alive that long. But his tone, calm, steady, confident, made Evan uneasy. When Evan pressed for details, Harold leaned closer. "You think the house is cursed, detective," he whispered. "But it's not. It's hungry." Evan stared at him, unsure if the man was losing his mind or trying to hide something. Harold smiled faintly. "Every few years, someone new moves in. Someone who fits. And the house chooses." The detective left with more questions than answers. But later that night, he got a call from the nursing home. Harold Crane was dead. Natural causes, they said, but the strange thing. He'd been found sitting up in bed, smiling, and in his hand was a small, rusted house key. Evan didn't sleep that night. He drove back to Ashford Street. The property had been sealed for investigation, but he had a gut feeling. He walked through the cold halls again, every creak sounding like a whisper. He reached the basement, the one place he hadn't explored. There, he found a small wooden door behind an old furnace. It was nailed shut. He pried it open. Inside, the space was barely large enough to stand in, and the walls were covered in writing. Not words, names. Dozens of them, carved deep into the wood. The earliest date, 1974. The latest, 2012. Clara Benson. But there was one more, one freshly carved name. Evan Cole. The sound that came from behind him was soft, a shuffle, a sigh. He turned, flashlight trembling. The air went cold, his breath fogging in the dark. Something moved in the shadows, slow, deliberate, watching him. He ran upstairs, heart pounding, but every door he tried was locked. He hit the walls, the windows solid. It was as if the house had sealed itself. Then he saw her, standing at the end of the hallway, a woman in a faded floral dress, pale skin, hollow eyes. Clara. Her voice was barely a whisper. It never lets you leave. The floor beneath him creaked, groaned, and before he could react, it gave way. He fell hard, crashing into darkness. When he woke up, it was morning. The house was quiet, empty. He stumbled outside, gasping for air. But something was wrong. The neighbors' houses looked different, newer. The street looked untouched by time. He turned toward his car, but it wasn't there. Neither was the police tape. Neither was the world he knew. And through the cracked window of number 39 Ashford Street, someone was watching him. An old man in a suit. Smiling. Evan screamed. Ran toward the street. But it just stretched endlessly. No turns, no exits. Just Ashford Street, repeating itself again and again. They found his car 2 days later, parked outside the old property. The door open, the keys still inside. But no sign of Detective Evan Cole. When they finally tore down the house a month later, the demolition crew found something buried in the foundation. A police badge, rusted but still legible. Number 47, Detective Evan Cole, and etched into the cement beside it fresh. Wet when they found it were 3 words. It chose me. Outro. Closing narration tone. Some stories don't end. They just